this is Corey from EarthQuaker Devices.
And today, we're going to be talking about the Grand Orbiter phase machine. Before we dive into the details of the pedal, let me provide a little bit of background on what a phaser truly is. A phaser is a type of modulation effect similar to a chorus or a flanger. It's been around since the late 60s, early 70s, heard on countless records across just about every conceivable genre. And unlike a chorus or a flanger, which utilizes varying delay times to achieve their sounds, a phaser's psychedelic modulation is filter-based. Before we go into how a phaser works, let me explain about what we mean by the term phase. Phase is merely a position in time on a waveform cycle, and it's used to compare against different waveform signals. If we were to imagine the simplest waveform of all, a perfect sine wave, and we make a copy of it directly below, you'll notice that the peaks are in line with the peaks and the valleys with the valleys. And this is what's referred to as in phase. Now, if we were to shift one of these waveforms against one another, you notice that they are no longer perfectly in sync, and this is what's commonly called out of phase, and would result in an audible thinning of the sound until it is shifted 180 degrees out of phase, where the two perfect sine waves would cancel each other out entirely. Now, a phaser works by initially splitting the input signal into two identical copies. One copy will remain entirely untouched, whereas the other copy will go through a series of all-pass filters, otherwise known as stages, whose sole purpose is to impart a phase shift to the signal. And the number of these all-pass filters may differ per design, but traditionally an analog phaser has somewhere between 4 and 12 stages. Now, these stages will produce a series of very sharp peaks and troughs when recombined with the original dry signal. And the frequencies that are in phase with one another will be reinforced and accentuated, whereas the frequencies that are out of phase with one another will cancel each other out, thus creating the phaser's characteristic notches. Now finally, the position of these notches across the frequency spectrum can be shifted by modulating an LFO, where we would perceive these audible interferences as like a lush swirling effect. The Grand Orbiter is a 100% analog, true bypass, 4-stage, OTA-based phaser. Let's take a closer look at the controls. First, we have depth. This blends the shifted signal with the dry and effectively controls the overall intensity of the effect. Rate. This fine-tunes the speed of the LFO as indicated by the always visible flashing red LED. Sweep. This governs the frequency range that the filters sweep through. Clockwise will be the upper frequencies, so it's going to be very bright, lively, and intense, whereas counterclockwise will be the lower frequencies, so it will be darker and a little bit more throaty. You can use this control to choose and emphasize more of the formant and vocal-like qualities. Resonance. This controls the regeneration, and as you turn this control clockwise, it creates a more pronounced resonant tone. Here we have the phase and vibrato mode toggle. Flip this toggle to kill the dry signal and use the Grand Orbiter as a true pitch vibrato. In this mode, the depth knob becomes volume control. And finally, in the top middle, we have the rate toggle to select between the different ranges of modulation. Rate 1 is a slow sweep mode. Rate 2 kills the LFO, and you can use the Grand Orbiter as a fixed resonant filter. And rate 3 is fast sweep mode. The Grand Orbiter is a great tool to add a sense of dynamic movement to an otherwise stagnant part. With any modulation effect, they'll sound radically different when they're placed either before or after distortion. One of the coolest things about the Grand Orbiter is just how slow it can go. So I'll put it in mode 1 and play on the synth for a little bit, and it might be hard to perceive at first, but it adds a really cool thickening to the sound that morphs over time. The Grand Orbiter also comes with our Flexi-Switching technology, which enables you to use the pedal as a standard latching switch or as a momentary just by pressing and holding. So. Now whether you like rock, funk, electronic, or experimental sounds, the Grand Orbiter will definitely add a new and exciting dimension to your music. If you have any questions about the Grand Orbiter or any of the other devices in our line, check out earthquakerdevices.com. See you next time.